Economic growth has always been a mystery to many of us. We always find it very difficult to identify the factors that drive the economic growth. And when it comes to forecasting, it is extremely difficult to understand and also have a guess what the economic growth will be. Often, the forecasters usually use two different approaches in terms of forecasting economic growth. One is theory based, it is shaped by how economists believe economists behave. On the other hand, another one is data. It is shaped by how economics behaved in the past. Today, we'll discuss about one of the theories of economic growth, the Solow Growth Model, which we also call the neoclassical growth model. So in this lesson, we'll discuss about the sources of economic growth of an economy under the Solow model. We'll discuss about the assumptions of Solow model, what it means by total factor productivity, and the Solow model, what are the implications of potential GDP, and also we'll talk about the idea of convergence of economies. So under Solow Growth Model, there are three sources of economic growth. One is the accumulation of inputs, one is the labor, another is the capital, and the discovery and application of new technologies, which the Solow Growth Model talks about, like total factor productivity. So what are the assumptions behind the Solow Growth Model? The assumptions behind the Solow Growth Model is that the production function has constant returns to scale. So the constant returns to scale mean that if I increase labor and capital by the same percentage point, and then the output will increase by the same percentage point. On the other hand, the second assumption says that the production function exhibits diminishing marginal productivity. So the diminishing marginal productivity with respect to an individual input. So this means if I increase capital per unit of labor, then the capital becomes less productive because the extra amount of capital produces less and less amount of output. So that's why under the Solow Growth Model, each individual input exhibits diminishing marginal productivity, whereas if we increase the both factors by say 20 percentage point, in that case, the output also will increase by 20 percentage point. So under the Solow Growth Model, we talked about that is a function of labor, is a function of capital, and is a function of total factor productivity. So what does total factor productivity mean? Total factor productivity represents the portion of growth that is not accounted for by capital and labor inputs. Actually, it is not directly observed. It must be estimated. So often it is very difficult to observe what drives the total factor productivity. Many economists say that it is because of the technological progress. It is because of improvement in education, like human capital. And it is also in the innovation in the production process, because as you produce more and more inputs, you learn new ways of producing, and the output per output per capital and output per labor improves. So how we estimate the total factor productivity? We can estimate total factor productivity by subtracting the growth driven by labor and subtracting the growth driven by capital from the overall growth. So if an economy grows, for example, at 7% rate, and 4% of that growth is driven by labor, and 2% of that growth is driven by capital, then total factor productivity must be 1% under the Solow Growth Model. So what are the implications for potential GDP under Solow Growth Model? So under Solow Growth Model, as it tells that as we increase capital, more and more capital is being employed per unit of labor, the capital exhibits diminishing marginal productivity. So long-term sustainable growth cannot rely solely on capital-dependent investment. So if you continue to increase the capital per unit of labor, at some point of time, it is not possible to grow the economy on a sustainable basis. So there must be a convergence of incomes between the developed and developing countries. There comes a question then, what does this convergence mean? The convergence means the countries with abundant labor but scarce capital will grow at fast rate. For example, many developing economies have huge amount of labor, but they lack the capital. So as they get more and more capital, the economy grow at a very, very faster rate. Where in the why that is increasing at a faster rate? Because the developing countries yet to reach their balanced growth path. So since the developing countries yet to uh, reach their balanced growth path where the capital is scarce and labor is abundant, so more capital increases the growth of the economy. So capital becomes very, very productive in the developing economies. Whereas in the developed countries, the capital is abundant but labor is scarce. So as they increase the more and more capital, the capital becomes less productive. So incremental boost to output declines. That's why there should be a convergence between the developed countries and the developing countries. However, Solow growth model is not the only growth model. There are endogenous growth model where it is assumed that by increasing capital in the technology, we can increase the GDP growth of a country. And the Solow model, we thought the total factor productivity is an exogenous factor. It is determined outside the model, whereas in the endogenous growth model, we think that through investment in capital and through investment in technology, we can grow the economy over time where the technology, the total factor productivity is thought as endogenous model. So thank you for watching this video.